We are in the last section of our syllabus, which is storage in Android. I'll just give you a brief overview of what is storage in Android and how many types are there and how they work and when should I use what type of storage first, and then we'll get to the program. Android normally uses a file system which is somewhat similar to disk-based systems like how Unix or other platforms follow, and there are different options for you to save data in your application. I'm just going to tell you where are the locations or what are the locations in which you can store this data and at what situation would these things make sense to us. So the first thing about storage is app-specific storage. By the way, I'll be dividing this into two types, like internal storage and external storage. Please note what we tell to customers, like for example, lay people. For them, internal storage means what is there already on the phone, and external storage means SD card. But what I am trying to tell here is not with respect to that kind of a storage. This is from your application as a developer. What do you mean by internal storage for you, and what is external storage for you? Now, according to a developer, internal storage means in the same place where your app is located, which nobody else can access. So app specific storage can be meant for only your app's use, which means you will not share the data with any other app. A normal user can see the data, etc. And that is an app specific storage. There are two types in that, internal and external. We'll be seeing that only in this first program. The second one is shared storage. This is something which your app intends to share with other apps, which means it is allowed for anybody, but it is created from your app. But the data which your app created can be used by other apps also. Like for example, WhatsApp. If you take a picture, if you send a picture, if you send a document, you receive a document, whatever chats you have done is not stored in the internal storage of the app. Rather, it is stored in external, specifically the shared location of your external, which means if you see, there's a separate folder created called WhatsApp in which your data is located, which will not be deleted even if you uninstall WhatsApp. That is shared storage. And the next one is shared preferences. This is to store private primitive data in key value pairs. Please remember the word means preferences, which means when I say preferences, like for example in your phone, the first preference you would see in your notification is whether it is the brightness, how much of the brightness do you want, and whether you want Wi-Fi on or off. These all are your preferences. So in other words, your options given to you, and it is stored. How will I know whether you have turned a theme as dark or light or any color you want? Where will I store the theme what you have chosen? Where will I store the brightness level what you have chosen, the volume level you have chosen? These are your preferences, and a place where you store private primitive key value pairs is shared preferences. I'll be using this and the next one, the databases, in another program. In this program, I'll be doing the first part, internal and external storage. Now, the last part is databases. Please note that you already know what a database is used for, and in this case, when I say databases, I'm not only talking about databases which is stored in your phone, but primarily it is always stored on your phone, and Android provides SQLite in order to do that functionality. Now, databases, there are two different types. One, it stores in the phone, in the app itself, which means only your app can access it, and the data is private, which means if I move from one phone to another phone, that data would not come with me, because when I uninstall that app from one phone, it will also be deleted along with it. So that is internal storage, internal database actually. But whereas the other way, for example, my account in WhatsApp, that is not stored in my phone, it is stored in a server. So that data, like how Hike works or Facebook, these data is coming from the server, it is not there on my phone. So those things, and data might be cloud based, like for example backups of the chats and Gmail, etc. So data can come from different ways in different formats to your phone, but basically these are the different, I've just put them in different categories so that we understand. There might be different ways, but these are the most common ways in which you store data through your app on your phone or on the server or on a network or on a cloud, doesn't matter. A little bit more about app specific storage before we go to the program. Number one, if in case your app wants to create a file which no other app will be accessing or should not access, then you will use internal storage directory. Okay, these directories include a dedicated location for storing your files and another location for storing cache data. I hope you know what's cache data, so we'll leave it like that. When it comes to external storage, these directories include a dedicated location for storing persistent files, another location for storing cache. All these things are same as internal storage. Only one difference is it is not stored when I say private, in the sense the internal storage cannot be seen by a normal user. External storage can be seen by a normal user, but will not make any sense to him because he doesn't know how to process it. The app can use this external storage directory, and the similarity between these two storages, when you uninstall your app, both will get deleted. Now, because of this kind of behavior, you should not use the storage if you want to save something which you want the user to keep even after your app has been uninstalled. For example, WhatsApp images. The images what you have taken through WhatsApp or you have received through WhatsApp will not be deleted if you have just uninstalled that app. With these information, we'll be starting the first program in which I'll be doing the internal and external storage in the same app. Let's get to the code. To do this program, I have created a new project with empty activity called storage demo. And in this one, I'm going to create two tabs, and each tab will represent one of the storage. So first tab will show internal storage, reading and writing. Second tab will do external storage, reading and writing. So for that, let's do the design of this page. So first thing I'm going to do is convert this constraint layout to a linear layout because I don't require any constraints. I'm just going to put the entire thing inside this, and I'm going to convert it into a vertical linear layout. And once that is ready, I'm going to put a tab layout inside it. And once you do that, it will create some templates already. So let's fix that also. So first click on the tab layout, go to its ID and give it an ID as tab layout. So now in the tab layout, I'm going to click on the last tab item and delete it. I just need two tab items. So let me choose the first tab item and see that this is taking the entire screen. So let's click on the tab layout and also change the height to wrap content, so that it stays at the top. Now I'm going to change the items of that. So the first one, I'm going to name it as internal. So I'm going to keep internal storage here, and the second one would be external. And if you like, you can also add icons to it. So let's do that. I'm going to click on icon. Since that icon what I require is not available here, let's create one of our own. So click on this add symbol and choose a vector asset. In that one, you can choose clip art which you like. So click on this and search for something which makes sense with the storage. So I'll just look for storage. You have these things. SD card I'll use as external. This one I'll use for internal. So this is the icon, and let me just name it as IC_storage. That's enough. Let's click on finish and choose this and click on OK. So you have an icon on top of that tab. The second tab is external. So let me click on that and choose an icon for that. Same thing. I'm going to choose a vector asset. And the clip part I'm looking for is storage. I'll choose the SD card storage so that you know it's external. And let me just remove the remaining parts here. IC_SD. Click on finish. I'll choose that and click on OK. So you have internal and external tabs. Tabs are ready, and as you know, we need the content should be manipulated by a view pager. So in the containers tab, look for something called view pager and put them inside linear layout, not touching the tab layout. So the remaining part of the program will be taken care by the view pager. So let's name it also. I'll just name it as view_pager. That's all in the code design part of this. So before I write the code part here, let's create a fragment called internal fragment, and then we'll do the design. And once we have done with the internal fragment, we'll come back and map it here in the main activity. For that, let's create a new fragment. So I'm going to right click on the app and say new fragment, blank fragment. Let me name it as internal fragment. I'll remove this factory methods and then click on finish. Once your fragment is ready, let's go to the design part of it. I'll delete that text view which is already there, and I'm going to put a linear layout vertical inside that frame layout. Let's put one text box, one label, two buttons. So the first one is the text view. So I'm going to use text input layout. I'll put it inside this linear layout, the first control, and please note it takes the entire screen. So I'm going to say the height as wrap content. So you have a text box. The next one I want is a label. So I'll put a text view inside the linear layout. One after the other. I have a text view, I have a text box. So one to take input, one to print the output, and the last one are two buttons. Let me just put two buttons below that, 1 and 2. One button to read and the other one to write. So these are the controls which I need. So I'm going to choose all the 4 controls and let's put a margin for them. Now once this is done, let's go to the individual properties. Let's start with the first one, text input layout. I'm going to go inside the text input layout, and in the edit text part, I am going to give an ID. Let's name it as ET internal. That's the edit text for internal. And remove the word hint from here because I'll be putting it on the layout. So let's click on the layout. I'll just write enter text to store internally. That's all. Once the text input layout is done, let's go to the next control, the text view. So first thing I'm going to give is the ID. I'm going to put it as TV internal. This is the text view for internal storage. And the text which is there, I'll just put it as content comes here. Let's also change the appearance of it. I'll just choose it as medium and let's give black color. Now this is the label in which my content will be printed, and this is the text box in which I'll be writing my content to store it in the internal storage. Now the next thing is there are two more buttons. Let's just name them also. For this button, I'll give the ID as BTN write internal, and the text I'll just say write text. And the next button, let me name it as BTN read internal, and let's name the text as read text. Let's choose these two buttons and change the appearance of the text as medium, and also let me give it as a black color. And now let me also change the theme or how that buttons look like to make sure that the style appearance says colored button, so that it looks like this. With that, this is the design part. Let's go to the code part. In the code part, the first thing I'm going to do is map all the controls which are there in the design to the code. Let's do that. You know what are the controls which we have. Let's start with the first one, which is the edit text, which is actually a text input edit text. So let me just name it as internal txt. The second one is a text view. So I'm just going to say text view internal TV. The next thing is the buttons. So let's say button read internal BTN write internal BTN. So I have 4 controls on the design, and I've taken all the 4 controls. Let's map them in on create. You see, as the line returns the inflator immediately, it will not work. So let's create a view object v is equal to, I'll cut this part of the code and put it on top, and then say return v, and everything I need to write should go between these two lines. Let's start with the first one, internal txt is equal to v dot find view by id r dot id dot et internal. Like this. Let's do the remaining controls also. Once we have mapped all the controls which are there in the design, let's go to the working part of it. In this part, all the work starts only when you click on those buttons. So I need a listener, especially a click listener. Since I have 2 controls, I'll implement on click listener to the class. So I'll just say implements on click listener. And once I do that, there'll be an error. Let's fix that by implementing this method called on click. And inside that on click, I'm going to write a switch case which says v dot get id. Based on which control was clicked on, I'll be doing the action. So let's start with case r dot id dot btn write internal. What am I supposed to do? And second one, r dot id dot btn read internal. What am I supposed to do? Now this is not enough because you have told the class to listen. We should also ask these 2 controls to start listening. So let me call that button object and then say set on click listener to this class. Same way for right button also. Now when you click on any of those 2 buttons, this is the code which will be triggered. So let's write the action for button which will write the data into the internal storage. So for that purpose, by the way, since these are read-write operations, I normally recommend you put everything inside a try catch because it is not recommended to write without it. It'll the ID will throw the error. Before that, let's do this, and the shortcut for that would be Control Alt T, and you will get this surround with. Let's choose try catch, and you'll get this statement. Let's remove the break statement from the try, and then let's write our code. Since we are going to write a file into the storage of your phone, basically, in other words, in an input-output operation, this is an output operation. So I'm going to use an output stream, a file output stream, to create a file and write it out. So I'm going to write a file output stream. Let me name it as output stream is equal to. I'm not creating a new object of file output stream. Rather, I'll ask this fragment to get me the activity from where it is running. By the way, if I'm writing this code inside an activity, the next line is enough. This line is not, this word get activity is not required if you're already inside an activity. Since this is a fragment, I'm calling the activity and then saying open file output. That's the only thing which returns file output stream. Please note the significance of this method open file output is that if that file already exists, it just opens it. But if the file does not exist, it creates that file and then opens it. Please understand the significance there. So I'm just going to call open file output, and I need to pass two things. Number one, what is the name of the file? Number two, the mode of the file. But since I'm going to use that name again and again, let's create it globally. I'll create the file name as string file name is equal to, you can give any name here you want. Since I'm going to focus on text file, I'm going to name it as my internal file.txt. Please note this is only one place, so that there's no mistake in this case or spelling. Only one place we write. Whatever we write, make sure that the file extension is given clearly. So I'm going to create a file called my internal file.txt, and here in this code I just need to pass the file name. So I'm just going to call the file name. Second one, in what mode do you want to create this file? I want to create this in a private mode, which means only to my app. So I'm going to say mode. Can you see different types of modes are available? I'm going to focus on the second one, which says mode underscore private. This is this file will be created in the private mode. Now the next line is we have just created a file and we have kept it there. I'm going to create another class called output stream writer, which will help me to write it. So I'm going to create an object of that new output stream writer, and within brackets I'm supposed to pass what is the stream which you would like to write. So I'm going to pass this output stream, which I've already got. So I'm just going to say output stream. Got it. Now our work is ready. You have the file, you have a writer. You just need to call this writer and ask it to write into that in the file. So I'm going to call writer and then say write what? What do you want to write inside that file which you just opened? Whatever the user has entered in the text box. So let me just call the internal edit text and then say dot get text dot toString. I want you to write whatever the user has written in that text box. That's all. Last line is to close that writer. And after this, let's also put a toast to the user so that the user knows that this has happened. So I'll just put a toast, and please note the context is not available. You need to call the context. So I'll just say get context and then say file written successfully. Now that we have finished with the writing part, let's do the reading part. In the read part, again, before I begin anything, let me just put a try catch. I'll remove the break statement and let's write the code. Just like how we used file output stream here, we'll be using the reverse in this block. So I'll say file input stream. Let me create it as input stream is equal to, just like how we wrote for the file output stream, I'm going to call activity and then say open file input. That's the one which returns file input stream. And here I just need to pass one parameter, the name of the file, which I already have globally. This is why I created it globally, because in both the places I need to call the same file name. Now, since I've already written into it, the next step I need to do is read from that. For that, I need an input stream reader. So let's create an object of input stream reader. So I'll just name it as input stream reader object is equal to new input stream reader, within which I need to pass an input stream, which I already have. So I've given input stream, the input stream reader will read it. So that part is done. The next thing is I need to read whatever is written inside that file and put it in that text view which I have. So for that purpose, I need a buffered reader. Otherwise, I need to convert all the ASCII characters into this. That's kind of an annoying one. Let's use buffered reader. I'm going to name it as reader is equal to new buffered reader. Within brackets, I need to pass an object of that input stream reader. So the buffered reader expects an object of reader output. So I have to say input stream reader. Now your buffered reader is ready. Now every line which is there in your text file, I need to read it and store it in another text so that I can merge all these things and make it as one full text. I'm going to create two objects, one string called temp, which I'll initialize to blank in the beginning. Second one is a string builder object. Let me just name it as text is equal to new string builder. Now let's open a while loop, and in that one I am going to write one more condition that every time the reader reads, so I'm going to say reader dot read line. if this is not equal to null, which means you have not reached the last line, till that keep reading. That's the idea of this entire while loop. So I've said every time the first line when you read, it will be stored in temp. And then when you reach the last line, that will return null. So till it is not equal to null, loop. In this one, I am just going to call that text what you created and then say append the temporary value what you got in the first line. So if there's only one line, it will just append and come out of the while loop. That's it. If there are 100 lines, the loop will run 100 times, append all the text which is there in that file, and then come out of the loop. Our text is now available in this line. So all I need to do is call the text view, which is internal tv dot set text to that text what you have got from the string builder converted to a string. With that, our work is done. You can call the reader and then say close. And once you have written, you need not put a toast because you will see the output on the screen automatically. So no need to write anything here. So our fragment is ready to work. Now the last part before I run the program is to map this to our main activity. Let's do that now. In the main activity, as I've already told in the previous program where we did the tab activity, you need to make sure that you have a adapter to make sure that the fragment pages are taken care of. So for that, let's create an inner class before we start with anything else. So I'm going to create public class. I'll name it as my adapter extends fragment pager adapter. And once you do that, it will ask you to implement certain things like get item and get count. Let's click on OK. And still it is showing because there's no constructor. Let's put the constructor, choose the one which is not striked out, and then click on OK. Just like how I've mentioned in the last class, you need to make sure that you should tell this fragment pager how many tabs are available. That is passed here. So I want to pass this to the get count method. In order to do that, I'm going to create an simple int called as tab count, and I'll instantiate it as soon as the constructor is ready by saying this dot tab count is equal to behavior which is passed to your constructor. So here I've got the tab count. I'm just going to say return tab count. With that, the first part is done. The next part is if you click on a particular tab, what am I supposed to return? So let me write only one condition. Here I am going to write a simple switch case. I'll take the position, and if the position is 0, I want internal storage. If the position is 1, external storage, and if it is nothing, return null. I don't have the second tab ready, so I'm just going to say if the case is 0, then return new object of internal fragment class. That's it. And if anything else comes, what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to return null. Our adapter is ready. Let's go to the code. I need to create an object of two controls which are there in the design, which is number one, tab layout. So let me create an object of tab layout. I'll keep it as it is. The next one is the view pager. So I'm going to create an object of view pager. Let me name it as view pager. Let's instantiate them appropriately. Tab layout is equal to find view by id r.id.tab layout. First one. Second one is view pager is equal to find view by id r.id.view underscore pager. Next thing, let's attach that adapter what we created onto the view pager. So let's create an object of my adapter. Let me name it as adapter is equal to new my adapter. I need to pass two parameters. One is the fragment manager. I'm just going to say get support fragment manager method. Second one, behavior. How will I know how many tabs are there? Just call the tab layout and then say get tab count. It will give me the total tab count of how many tabs available in that tab layout. So adapter is ready. Now just need to call the view pager and say set adapter to the adapter which you just created. The next two things is number one, I need to make sure that the adapter, the view pager remembers or loads what item you have chosen. And also the tab listens to each tab change listener. So let's start with the first one. I'll call the view pager and then say add on page change listener. Let's create an object and call the first one tab layout on page change listener. And in that one, you need to pass the object of tab layout, which I already have. I'll just pass that. So first step is done. Next, I need to make sure that the tab layout listens to which has changed. So I'm going to say add on tab selected listener. Let's choose a new object of on tab selected listener. It will create a lot of things. I'm only focused on one method, which is on tab selected. What am I going to do here? You are just going to call the view pager and set the selected item to the tab's position. So let me write view pager dot set current item to whatever is passed to you, that tab's position. So you'll get the position here. If it is 0 means it is internal. If it is 1 means it is external. That's how we have kept. So if 0 is passed, I'll get the new internal fragment. Before we run the app, the last part we need to focus on is the switch case here. Please note I've written only one case. Case 0 means this will happen. That's all. But what if case 1 is passed? It'll return null. When it returns null, your program might crash because null cannot be represented on your view pager. So what should I do for that? Right now, just to avoid the confusion, I'm going to put default return null, or let me just keep this entire thing commented for now, because I need 2 tabs to make this program work. So irrespective of which tab you have clicked on, I just want you to return a new object of internal fragment. This is just temporary. In the next program, I'll change it into a proper switch case. I wrote that case so that you understand how it works. But since in this case, I don't have 2 fragments to display, irrespective of which item you click on, same fragment will return. That's why I wrote just return new internal fragment. Now let's run the program and check it. Now the program is running. You can see that there are 2 tabs, internal and external, but if I go to both the tabs, the content is same. The reason is we have written like this. It returns the same internal fragment irrespective of which position you are in. So let's just try here. I'm going to write this is from internal storage. I'm going to write this, and then I'm going to say write text. So let me click on the button, and the toast comes saying file written successfully. Now let me just read the text so that the text comes here in this label here. Now it is read from the internal storage. Now before we wind up with this program, let's also see where it is actually stored in your phone. By the way, this is not possible in a phone, in an actual phone which you use if you are trying to use it through the file manager. But there is a way in which you can see where this file is actually stored if you are using Android Studio to run this project. So let's go to the Device Explorer. Let me show you how to do that. In your Android Studio, to the right side, to the right corner of your Android Studio, you will find something called Device File Explorer. Please find that. If you can't find it there, please go to View and then choose Tool Windows and choose Device File Explorer from here. Either way, just get this Device File Explorer running, and please note this is the emulator which is running in my system. So let me find where I have created this particular project called Storage Demo. For that, you need to know the package name. That's very important. Look at the package name, and with that, let me go and search. First, you need to know this is the root folder of your phone, which is not normally accessible by any file explorer which you install on your phone, because by default root is disabled. But since this is an emulator, you are given all these choices. Even if you have rented an actual phone, you'll be able to see this, but you'll not be able to modify anything here because you're not the root user. So let me just open data folder inside the root. Please note I am in the root folder. Let me choose data. Inside that, one more folder called data would be there. Let's open that folder and carefully go to the package which you just created. My package name is com.thomas.storage-demo. Let me just go to that particular file. Let me find that folder. I have storage demo. So let me open that. If you see in that particular thing, there is cache folder, code cache folder, files folder. And by now you would have guessed it's in the files folder. You see that my internal file.txt. You can download it into your system. It will open it here temporarily. You can see that the data which I just wrote into my text box there is now stored here in internal file.txt. It's created in the internal storage of your app. This will not be available by any other app, first of all. And even if you open your file browser, file manager, and try to go to this place, you will not be able to do unless you are a root user. Please remember that it is not available for everybody. With this, our program is done. In the next part of the video, we'll be doing external storage. In this video, I'm going to continue with that program with external storage in a separate fragment. Let's start with the program now. In order to demonstrate the external storage working of this project, let's go create another fragment called external fragment. Right click on the app, new fragment, a blank fragment. Let's name it as external fragment. I'm going to remove the include factory methods thing, click on finish. Once the Gradle sync is complete, let's start with the design phase of the external fragment. Since the design is almost similar, let me just copy the code which is available in internal and modify according to how I want it. I'm going to the code part. I'll copy the linear layout alone, which is there here in the frame layout of my internal fragment. I'll go to the external fragment, go to the design, delete whatever is there in the frame layout and put this there. And please note, all must be renamed appropriately. So let's go back to the design of the external fragment. Wherever you wrote internal, I'll replace it with external. So first thing I'm going to click on is the text input layout. You see here I've written enter text to store internally. I'll change that word to externally. Code part of it, here it will be easier. You see et external. Here I'll just say remove that word tv external, btn write external, btn read external. Done. So our design is ready. In the code part, the first thing we are going to do is to map the controls like how we had done. I'm going to create 4 objects starting with text input edit text. Let me name it as external txt, and the next one is text view, which is external tv. Let's create the objects of the buttons. So let me create button write btn, read btn. So the next part would be to create or map all these things in the onCreate view. Let's do that now. Let me create an object of view and cut this entire code and put it here. And let me keep it as return v. External txt is equal to v dot find view by id r dot id dot et. We have 2 now. I'm going to choose external because this is for that. Like this, let's map all the controls. Once all these mappings are done, let's handle the click listener here. So let me go to the class and say implements on click listener. Let's fix by implementing the method on click. And also let's ask these 2 buttons to start listening to this class. So I'll say set on click listener to this class, and read button dot set on click listener to this class. And once we are done, let's go to the switch case here. I'll write switch v dot get id, and inside that case r dot id dot first btn btn write external. What am I supposed to do? Break. Case r dot id dot btn read external. Let's keep it as break. Before we write the logic of writing and reading, there is one important concept which we need to understand, that in the last program what I did was internal storage, which means you are writing in your app's own folder. So you don't require any special permissions. But when it comes to this case, it's a little bit different because you are going to use the permission. You need the permission to write or read from the external storage of your phone. For that, let's do the permission part now by going to the manifest. Let's open the manifest file, and in the manifest, let's write 2 permissions. Let's start with number 1, uses permission, read external storage. That's the first permission we are looking for. And the second permission is to write into external storage. Let's come to the external fragment class, and then we'll write the code to ask permissions. So let's write inside the first line itself, I'll be writing if get context dot check self permission. So in that one, we are going to ask what permission are you looking for. I'm going to write manifest dot permission dot write external storage if this is not equal to granted. So I'm looking for permission is not equal to granted. If it is not equal to granted, what am I supposed to do? I am supposed to request permissions, and you know the permissions. I have 2 permissions here to be asked. One is manifest dot permission dot write external storage, also the permission to read external storage. So I'm going to write manifest dot permission dot read external storage. These 2 permissions. And do you have a request code? I'll just put 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to check. I assume that you know how to check for permission, so I'll stop with this. And let's go and fix this error by just saying surround if it's greater than or equal to m. That's it. So now with this, our permission problem will be taken care of. If you have clicked on allow, I'll continue. Else you can even stop the program or come out of the fragment, etc. So the permission part is taken care of now. Now let's go to the writing part. Before we write the code for this particular purpose, I need you to understand that after Android 10 onwards, there's a change in the way in which the writing of external storage works. So what code I'm going to write right now is a legacy code, which means it supports, or it is working perfectly till Android 28, I guess. 29 onwards, there'll be a little bit different. it'll be a little bit different with respect to the working. So I'll just show first the old way, and then we'll write the new way also before we stop. I'll be putting it in comments so that all the three or two or three ways are already available in the same program. So let me start with the first, the age-old mechanism of creating a folder in the external storage and then putting our files inside that external storage location. And since we are going to use the legacy way of writing code to create an external storage, let's go to the manifest and make sure that the system understands that this is going to use legacy storage. So let's go to the manifest. And in the manifest, I wanted to come to the application tag. Anywhere inside the application tag, please look for Android : just look for something called external. You see that there'll be one more option called request legacy external storage, which is the older version till 28, API level 28. 29 onwards, it's a little bit different. Since I'm going to use the old one also, I'm just telling the system that I'll be using the legacy version also. This will work in all the phones, even if it is the latest version of the phone. But if we are using a phone which is lesser than the current version and it's not Android 10, anything else below that would work perfectly without even writing this code. But anyway, let's do a comprehensive code. So this is done. Now let's go back to the code. Before we write both write or read operation, let's make sure that the file name is same for both the places. So let me go to the global declarations and just add one more string called file name. And I'll be naming it as my external file.txt. Just for our understanding, this is my external file.txt. I'll use the same file name everywhere. Once the file name is ready, you need to write the code to read and write into a file inside the external storage. Unlike the internal storage where the location is already prefixed, which means you already know where it is going to be stored. External gives you a variety of choice. The first thing is to store it in the Android data folder of your SD card or your storage, your internal ROM, or also we can keep it in a particular folder where you like on your memory card or your internal storage. Now, because of this, there's a slight confusion. Where will your files be stored? Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own folder called AIMIT in the internal storage of your phone, and then I'm going to put the file inside that. And also when you want to read, I need to go to that folder, open that file and then read it. So the operations is going to be the first 2-3 lines is going to be same irrespective of whether you want to write or read. So let me write before the switch case. Let's start with file. Let's create an object of file. Let me name it as folder, because I'm going to create a folder or I'm going to locate a folder in my external storage. So I'm going to create with that is equal to. The first thing what I'm going to do is like how WhatsApp creates a folder called WhatsApp in the internal storage and then puts everything inside that folder. I'm going to create my own folder first and then put the file inside that folder so that anybody can see. So for that, I'm going to create a new file object. Within brackets, I'm going to pass environment. This is belonging to Android.os. It'll automatically pull. Please note the striked out means it is now deprecated, which means it is legacy, which is old version. New versions do not recommend this. They have a different way. I'll show both. First, let me use the old version. So let me just call external storage directory dot get path. It'll get the path of your storage. Please note this is not your SD card if you have an external storage. When I say external storage from the app, external storage is whichever is not in the apps folder, which is basically internal storage of your phone. What is visible to you in the file manager of any application if you have. If you have an application like file manager, whatever you can see through that, not the SD card, apart from that, everything else what you see through is internal storage for you. So I'm going to call that and let's concatenate that with another folder called AIMIT, or you can name it whatever you want, whatever name you want to give here. So what I've done in this line is just create a file I'm just getting the path where your internal storage is and then creating one folder called AIMIT inside it. So let's say first condition is if that folder does not exist. So I'm going to say if not folder dot exists, which means if that folder does not exist, make that folder. In other words, I'm going to say folder.mkdirs. Done. If the folder does not exist, create one. By the way, in order to do this, you need permission to read and write external storage. Remember that. And also in the manifest, you need to make sure that the legacy mode is enabled because the emulator what I am running is Android 10. Now the next thing is, where is the file actually located? So please note, if I'm putting it, if I'm telling it in Windows fashion, let's say for example, you created a folder called temp or AIMIT in C drive. So you know the folder, the directory and the folder name, but you need to also put the file name so that I can read or write into it. So let me create a file. Let me name it as my file is equal to new file. I'll be passing two parameters here. One is the folder name, the other one is the file name. So let you know already where is the folder. Second one, what is the file name, the child or the file name. I have it in global, so I'll just put that. So your file is ready. Now you've got an exact path of where the file is located. Now this can be manipulated. The first few lines what I've written can be manipulated as much as you want. That's why I put them away. These lines of code are common for whether you're writing it into the external or reading it from the external. This is something which you need to be clear about, where you are going to store the external data. Now let's go to the write code of your switch case. These codes are very pretty much straightforward. Let's create a file output stream. Let me name it as output stream is equal to new file output stream. The only thing I need to pass as an object to this particular thing is the file. You can see I just need to pass the file object, which I already have. I'm going to pass my file. Now the reason why that error comes is because in the last program, if you remember, I had put try catch all around. Here I have not put a try catch. So let's fix that. I'll just put Control Alt T and say try catch. So you've got the exception. I don't want file not found. I'll just say exception. Any exception for that sake. Now the next thing is output writer. So I'm going to say output stream writer. I'm going to call it as writer is equal to new output stream writer, within which you know already what to pass output stream. So you have the writer. The next step is to ask the writer to write something. Whatever you have written in the text box which you have created here. So the text box is external txt. Let me call external txt dot get text dot toString. Whatever you have written there, whatever you have typed in the text box, write it into the file. Done. The last line is to close that writer, and then we can put a toast saying get context. In this one we can just say file written successfully. So the writing part is done. The reading part is somewhat similar to the previous one. First let's put everything inside a try catch. I'm going to choose try catch, and please note when you write try catch, the break statement is automatically included inside the try. The break should come after the case is done. So cut that and put it after the try catch so that the break applies to this case. Inside the try block, all we are going to do is to do the same thing what we did in the last program. File input stream, let me name it as input stream is equal to new file input stream. For that I need to only pass one thing, the name or the file. So I'm going to pass the file which I've created already. Irrespective of which button you have clicked on, this file will be ready. And the next thing is to open input stream reader. So I'll say input stream reader is equal to new input stream reader, which requires a parameter of an input stream, which I can pass. The next step is to call a buffered reader. So I'll call a buffered reader. Let me name it as reader is equal to new buffered reader. Within that, I just need to pass this input stream reader. Now, just like how I did in the previous program, string temp is equal to double quotes. String builder, let me name it as the actual text is equal to new string builder. Now, while I'll put one more condition is that temp is equal to reader dot readline. If this entire thing is not equal to null, call the text and then say append the temp value which you get from each line which you read. With that, our work here is done. You can call the reader and then say close. Now you need not put a toast here because it will be displayed. It should be displayed on the text view. So what I'm going to do here is the external TV text view and then say set text to whatever you just got from the string builder converted to string. Done. So our read and write part is done. Now let's go to the main activity and link this fragment also. The reason why we came to the main activity is because if you remember, we had commented this one out. So let's fix that. I'll remove this one and let's remove the comments. And here if you see case 0, you have given return new internal fragment. What if it's a second tab? You want me to return a new object of external fragment. Done. I have only 2 tabs. There is no possibility of coming here. If you give 0, I'll give you new internal fragment. If you give the tab as 1, I'll give external fragment. Now there should not be any issues. Let's run the program and check the output. Now that the program is running after writing the permissions code, you see that the permission is asked first. Allow storage demo to access files on your device. This takes two permissions. One is to read external storage as well as to write external storage. Let me click on allow. Now your program is ready. You see internal tab has internal, and the external tab is what we just created right now. Let's try this. Let me just type some text. Let's say this is from external. That's enough. Let me just write this into the system. It's written successfully. And let me try to read it from my program whether it's working. It's working because what I wrote right now has been read from the system. Now that part is done. Now let's go and check whether a normal user can see that file which you just created. Let me come back to my home screen. I'll go and find the file explorer of my phone, and in the file manager, please note there are two different types of storages here. This is what normally people know. This is the internal storage. This is the SD card or external storage called as. But please note for your app's place where the data is stored is internal, and this is considered as external 1, external 2. Please note this is not internal for your app. It is internal for your phone. This is according to your phone, this is internal storage, this is external storage. But according to your app, where the app is stored, where that data is stored is internal, and this both are external. This is 0, this is 1. That is how it's considered. This is emulated and this is SD card. So now anyway, let me open the internal storage of my app. You see there's a folder called AIMIT which I've asked you to create, and inside that folder of AIMIT, the external file which we just created is also available. Let me just open it and see what data is available inside it. The one which I just typed is available, which means our work here is done. Now, apart from this folder called AIMIT, what about I want to store it in the system folders like download or movies or music or pictures, something like that. What should I do? Only one line of code change is required. Let's do that now. Please come to the place where you have written the first line, the file folder. I'll change that folder from AIMIT. Remaining every code remains the same, only this part changes. So let's write one more, but let's comment this out and let's create another file called folder is equal to new file. But this time I'm going to write environment dot get external storage public directory. Please note both are deprecated. When I say that it's not available in new ones, older ones, but still it works because we have said support legacy. So I'm just going to say external storage directory. You need to pass the type of directory which you would like to store this data in. So I'm going to call the environment and then say what are the directories available in the public storage. You can see the directories available: downloads, movies, DCIM is the cameras folder, documents and alarms, audiobooks, music, notification, pictures, podcasts, etc. I'm just going to choose the downloads folder because that's the commonly used one. You can even, if you're storing a picture like an MP4 or something, you can put it in movies. If it's an image, you can put it in DCIM, and it goes on like that. So I can just choose downloads, and now you've got the folder. And then let's say get path. So you will get the path of the downloads folder because this might change based on your phone. That's why we write a general code. Now the remaining part we can also concatenate that with, say for example, you want to create another folder inside downloads folder and then put all the data inside that. That also we can do. I'll just put /AIMIT. Done. Now if you run the program, please note on the top you said get the path of your SD card storage directory and then create a folder there. But here you said get storage of public directory and get the path, which means wherever the downloads folder is located in your internal storage, get that downloads folder and then create a folder called AIMIT. Remaining code, you know, if it doesn't exist, it will make one and then create that file name also. Let's try to run this program again and see the output. Now the program is running. Let me not write it before. Let me just go and see whether that downloads folder is available in my system. So I'll open the file manager and let me go to the downloads folder. There's nothing there because it's an emulator. I had not downloaded anything. You have downloads folder. So just to access this, I'll go to this SD card. You see downloads, there's a folder. Let's run this app once again. In that app, I'm going to choose the external tab. In that one, let's write it. Please note I've changed the code where path was AIMIT in the SD card directly. I changed it into downloads folder. Let me say this should be from downloads. And now once the text is written, let me just write it and file is written successfully. Let me read it and see whether it is coming. It's come. Now let's go back to our file manager and see the download folder. Now the download folder has, please note this is the downloads folder of my system. In the downloads folder, you have one more folder called AIMIT. I'll open that. My external file is available. Let me click on it. This should be from downloads. I've got the downloads folder also. Now please note, both the ways in which I created right now are legacy ways, which means probably they're deprecated now. You cannot continue with this. Now the next part, what I'm about to do is the current version, which will work in every phone, but I'll not be doing it in the downloads or directory folders. It will go to the external storage of your app specifically. The last part of this program is to make sure that we use a compatible code instead of the deprecated ones. Also, to write it inside the folder of your external storage, which is available to the app alone, but also to the user also. Let's do that now. I'm going to create one. I'm going to comment this line out and create one more file called folder. And let me create it as a new file. But this time I'm going to use the current version, which means you cannot use the deprecated. This is not a deprecated version. If you're writing this in the activity, this code is not required, the get activity. But if it's not an activity, you need to get the activity and then say dot get external files directory. And you need to also pass a type. If you don't want to have a type like downloads or podcasts or all those things, just put a double quote and just leave it blank. That will work. And then say dot get path. And then concatenate that if you want with a URL, if you want to create your own folder or something. So let's do that. I'm going to write /AIMIT. Done. So you've got a path. If that path does not exist, it gets created. Everything else is fine. The first two are deprecated versions of writing, but it will go to your, and also it is in your internal storage. But this is not exactly available for people to see unless you know where to look at, but it is available for people to see. I'll show that. Let's run this program and see the output. Now that the program is running, let me click on external and let's type something. Let's say this is from a deep data directory. And now let me just write this text into the system and then let's try to read it. It's working. Let's go and find out where this is now written. So for that, let me open the file manager. And in the downloads, it is not the same. It's a different one. This should be from download. This is not the text. Let's go find where this is written. So I'm going to go to the internal storage of my phone. Every phone's internal storage will have a folder called Android specifically. Normally, you're not supposed to mess with that. Let's just open it and look for the folder called data. And inside that folder, find your package name. So I have my package name as com.thomas.storage demo. Please note I'm accessing it through my file manager, which means it is in external, not within my apps folder, but this is created by my app. So let me open that. And there's one more folder called files. Let me open that. There is my folder called AIMIT, which I created through code. Let me open that AIMIT folder. There is an external file. Let me open that and see what data is coming from there. So now you've got the idea where to store. This data is stored internally within your app, but it is available for the user to see. This is according to the app, this is an external storage. That's it for the external storage of Android. In the next video, we'll start with SQLite and shared preferences. Thank you guys.